All right, hello, welcome to the Hinge Games live stream. Jacques and I are here
Okay.
today. What are we talking about? We were just actually writing up a document for like what we're going to talk about. Jacques has been doing some material stuff. I've been doing
Mhm.
more networking stuff. So yeah, let's get to it. Yeah, Jacques, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I guess I started off last week making what's known as a master material for all of our dungeons. And so what that kind of entails is, did I go into this a bit last week? I think I did.
Oh,
I didn't
no, you
really
can go
go
over it again. It's
too
fine.
deep into what I was actually doing with the master material, but basically a master material is sort of like all of the bells and whistles that you would like a shader to do, um, uniformly in that one instance of our dungeons, I guess. And so it's a bit difficult for us because this was like the first master material we've made for the environments, and it's sort of going to be kind of the backbone of the shader that we use for the entire game in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So I'll share my screen. I'll start getting into it a bit. Okay, where
Okay.
am I? Here, right. I'll share my present now. I'll do my entire screen.
This where it gets
You
confused.
see
This
this?
one.
All right. Oh, there we go. All right, so here we go. Uh, Neath art assets, care environments, material
Mhm.
environments. Wow, I'm getting blind. Dungeons, and so I'll open up our first like dungeon floor O1 just to kind of show what I've been working on here.
Mhm.
And I kind of go into it a little bit from here. So this dungeon floor is actually made up of several materials. It's the one that's kind of in the demo. The feedback I got from it was maybe a bit too bright, shiny, and noisy, and too distracting. So what we decided to do is really dull it down and sort of make everything a lot more muted and neutral. So just to kind of break down what the materials are for this thing, we've got like our this trim material here. So it's actually quite elaborate. We've got our the floor trim, like the outer trim here. We've got our what's there? A mistake. We can do that after. a We have these little circles here and kind of the corners and all these different pieces. So there's basically 9 elements that make up this entire kind of floor. And what I needed to do was make all these different kind of texture groups and shaders. The thing about this though is because we've made this corner is I could then reuse the same corner again on another room. I could use the same thing in another context in another room. So I could keep making different rooms with kind of the same amount of textures. But the thing is I could also swap like this brick texture with another brick tile texture. I could swap this with another type of texture. So it becomes like you get more variety out of having these things kind of separatable. So if the plan is to have these things randomized in a way where I can get this brick floor changed to something like a hexagonal pattern. I'll change it to like a checkerboard thing. I'll change it to something another kind of brick overlay. This little trim I'll change to something else. And I was thinking of making this kind of copper brass trim, like metal trim, into like a brick trim. And so like we'll have a lot of variety in there, right? And so that's the goal is going to make 2 or 3 of each one of these, and then just kind of throw them in the mix and we'll have them kind of randomized. The thing about it is like we don't want the floor to kind of be the star of the show, so it does kind of have to look a bit muted, right? In terms of how all of this works. So it has to look elaborate and nice, but it also can't take away from the characters and the action on the screen. Because right now what was happening is I think in the gameplay videos that we were showing before, it was a little too elaborate and it was a little too um
Noisy.
eye-catching, which is what you don't want for what's essentially going to be your background, right? So uh, I will go into the shaders. Yep. So I'll just go into the first shader, which is the floor center, which I guess will be floor center. Where the heck is it? Floor center. Uh, Floor center. So it's this. It's these trim areas here, just so that we kind of know what I'm working on. And I will minimize this window and open this up. Actually, where's the master material? Here we go. Okay, so the creation of a material like this is actually a little kind of it's complex, but not really. Like from an artist's point of view, it's a bit daunting to learn at first, but it's actually not too difficult. Generally, the types of textures that we need to make a material is the diffuse texture, which is kind of like the color. Let me I'll load that up here for a sec. Oh, I swapped them all out. Okay, well, I'll go back to this. So it's browse material. So kind of the materials that make up a texture. What's going on?
Or the textures that make up a material.
The textures that make up a material, that too, is something called a diffuse, which is like this color. It's the normal map, which this is kind of what augments the lighting. And this is going to be a bit complicated because it's not a real texture. It's the well, actually that's the okay, ambient occlusion. This is the roughness, and this is the metalness. So I'll go into kind of, well, I don't know if I should kind of go into this as a lesson because I don't want to be teaching like a 3D class. But what we need to do is we kind of need to create a master material that augments all of these and makes them kind of tweakable to what we need so that we can reuse the same sort of setup so we're not kind of loading it each and every single time.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me go back to where I was before. I realize that it's going to be really tough for me to talk about this without getting too deep into like uh, a technical talk about 3D. So I'll just
Yeah.
say like some of the inputs I wanted to play around with and have kind of changeable in this master material was like um, let's go into it. Was some of the where the heck am I? Oh
Like you can just open any of the material
yeah,
instances if you wanted to look at
open
that
this
stuff.
material just so that we have this to show. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have some of the functionality I want to have was how shiny do I want this thing? So the default was to have it like really shiny like this. And but the thing was, is this is a bit too shiny, a bit too distracting for the game. So I'm going to tone this down to about 0.5. So what I had to do is I had to create something in the master material to kind of have it so it could be toned down. And that was just kind of like another thing. Another was kind of like the control of the down here, the color. So the default color was actually going to be quite bright like this. I don't even know if you guys remember like the previous weeks. It was like you came into the room and it was like really, really bright metal here. It was this bright, kind of lighter trim. It was kind of like this grayish tone here, and it was a bit too distracting. So I wanted to kind of make this neutral closer to point like 50% gray. So I muted all the
Mhm.
colors. It's actually easier just kind of from a 3D from an art sense to lower the color than it is to boost it, because by boosting it what tends to happen is you start getting kind of unpredictable uh results of what might happen. You end up going over 0 over 1 on your texture, so you start
Mhm.
getting burnout where you don't want it. And so it's actually easier to make it brighter and then reduce it down. And then of course the metal color, that was the same sort of thing where it was this really, really bright gold, I think, in the previous weeks, and I just wanted to kind of tone this down. But the thing was, is what I can do is in this with this master material setup is I can actually change all of them. I could change kind of all of these things on the fly. So it's not necessarily something we have to do kind of in the texture up front. And then kind of the last thing that we did, and this was the part that kind of took the better part of the last week, was to make something called an ambient a global ambient occlusion is what I'm calling it, a global ambient occlusion for the room.
Mhm.
And so uh, I'm gonna have to open up 3ds Max to kind of show what this sort of was about. So as you guys may notice, there is a like a dirt kind of overlaid over this entire thing, but it's not like kind of a random even layer of dirt. Whoops. It's actually it's dirt that's kind of accumulated more along the kind of the entire edges of the room. It's also kind of
And like in the
dirt that accumulates,
crevices and stuff like that.
yeah, in the crevices of these areas, but also in the higher up areas like the center here, you're getting
Mhm.
less. And the way we do this is actually kind of a hacky way. Did I open up my 3ds Max? Yeah. It was actually kind of a hacky way of I'll just do this in Marmoset, it might be faster.
Yeah. I think we talked about this last week because basically
Oh, I did.
the
Okay.
the ambient occlusion mask is kind of like it just kind of shows where not necessarily the shadows are, but the where the
Yeah.
ambient occlusion is, and it's basically like
Yeah.
places where there's more shadows, kind of, and there's
Yeah.
less places for light to less surfaces
That's
for
right.
light to bounce around, or it just
We did
basically
talk about
occludes more
about
light.
the bouncing of everything. So the thing is we're actually getting that, and we're modulating it with something called a height map. So the height map is something I'm going to plan on using eventually if we can get it to work, which is basically how high are these things, right? So for something like this, where's our floor? Where's our one? Okay. So for something like this, um, we wanted kind of this metal part to look a bit higher than the rest of it. So we're going to have to kind of make this thing modulate in a way where it raises, would visually raises higher. We're not sure if we can get this to work. We're still kind of getting one of our techs to look at it and kind of assessing what the actual frame rate cost this is going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
if we can get this to work, it's great. But if not, we're going to just kind of use this to modulate it. So we invert this mask, right? So we're getting more on top of kind of the ambient occlusion for the room. We're getting additional, like everywhere it's dark, we're getting additional dirt buildup in these kind of creviced areas. So and another mask we're modulating this all with is the ambient occlusion mask. So going back to this, uh, not this one, view the red channel. So it's the ambient occlusion mask here. So it's kind of a combination of this, the height mask, and the room ambient occlusion, which probably doesn't make any sense when you look at it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, to modulate kind of where the dirt gets built up. So it's kind of in the recessed areas, it's around kind of like cracked areas, but globally it's also more closer to where the edges of the room are. So we're getting more dirt build up here than we would here, I guess. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the gist of how this entire thing works. And so I've been doing this past week. Then I also needed Bjorn's help to do some other things because the ambient occlusion based on this room is going to be different on another room with a different kind of pattern and different dimensions. So I need to bake out a new ambient occlusion mask for the different room to try and get this entire thing working. Yep. And so that's where I'm at.
Cool.
I'm actually working on over the next week. I'll be working on the different types of rooms that we already have pre-made for this, and I'll be baking the ambient occlusion for those, and then kind of moving forward with
Mm-hmm.
making kind of getting the randomization of different types of floor patterns. I just from the judging from the looks of it, I don't think we're going to need that many, mainly
Mm-hmm.
because the room itself is right now, even though it's elaborate, it's a little bit drab and invisible, and I think I kind of like it like that because
Mm-hmm.
we want most of the color, and it's something I brought up with Bjorn this past week was we want a lot of the color and the lighting and the mood to be derived from the lighting itself and not from
Yeah.
the actual like painting this room red, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we want all that information to be coming in the lighting and the post processing. So we're going to be. I'll probably start making a big push for that afterwards. Yep. Anyway, that's where we're at.
Cool.
And does that ambient occlusion, are you going to apply it to other objects or only on the floors for now?
It's actually on everything, but the thing is, um, like it's on the characters, it's on everything. But the thing is we're actually using the ambient occlusion to help with the dirt spreading, I guess,
Okay.
spreading of
Yeah,
the
that
dirt.
makes sense.
Yeah, because it's sort of like it's cool information that we could somehow use, but it would also that would be where we collect all of the extra dirt. Let me kind of show something else that Bjorn worked on with this shader. That was kind of cool. Was the and this kind of ties in with the kind of controls that we made with the master material before. Where are we? Master material floor. Back to. I'll just open it. Was okay. Is that we can control the ambient occlusion, the different types of ambient occlusion, I guess. Let me full screen. Let me partially. Let me make this bigger, I guess. Wow, it's really laggy. Okay. And I'll just check all of these. So the global ambient occlusion we have it set to 1, like we could set it to like
Mm-hmm.
5, 10.
And this is the dirt mask.
Yeah. So if you put it at 5, it's 0. But then
I
if we
think,
start,
do you mind if I do
yeah,
this on my PC?
yeah, sure. But the thing was, is I did a few other parts of this where you can
Mhm.
modulate it. You can modulate the ambient occlusion using like the different types of textures that we have. So
Mhm.
this is the local AO. So the ambient occlusion that I have locally, this is kind of what I
Mhm.
wanted. And so we could have it like with this. And I had another one with the height. Did I have the height one in here? Thought I did. I guess not.
Hmm.
That's something I'll have to expose then. Because yes, I think I had at one point in time was the height map available where we could um
Mhm.
modulate the height mask out of this. So I'll make sure to expose it. I totally forgot about that. Oh, and this is another cool feature I put in if you wanted
Oh,
to
it's
double up
tiled.
on the tiling.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Anyway, yeah. And I'll let Bjorn talk about the other ambient occlusion
Yeah. Well, it's not really ambient occlusion. It's let me just that for a sec.
functionality.
And that as well. So I guess I could shut that down. Okay. So basically, all the stuff Jacques was just talking about, like we have it in here, and we can tweak it and then save that, and then that's stored in the database. But what we can also do is I made this object here, so we can set like in a level, we can set all of the different settings, and I can play around with like, okay, so let's look at the dirt mask. So I can change this dynamically, and you should be able to see like the amount of dirt there coming in and out.
Mhm.
And then you'll see that this like red stuff here. I basically made because we can swap out textures for individual stuff. This is the diffuse for index 2, so that's the second, or technically it's the third because it starts at 0. But and I can set that to like either 0, so that'd be the first, and it's just applying this to the different materials because there's 9 total. So I can set it to like, because it starts at 0, so technically number 8 is the last one. And so we can override, this is how we'd override the specific materials. And then we can change overall like the dirt. And then we can also, so I'm trying to figure out, because there's a lot of settings here that I don't know exactly how they're meant to work. But I know stuff changes when I use the slider. So, but I could like kind of like, you basically, the idea would be Jacques could get something he likes like this. And
Mhm.
then we could just copy this and then paste it into an asset in Unreal. Or I'll actually do that right now. So here in a data table. So we have this dungeon floor data table. And then I can just create a new setting. Call this stream. I can paste in all the settings from there. Paste. So now this is a preset we can use. And if I
Mhm.
go over here to this other tile, I'll just zoom in so you can see. So I can select the new stream setting. And oh, yeah, I have to check use preset. Otherwise, it'll just use the default setting. So I'll check use preset. And then now it looks exactly like the other one that I was just customizing. So we'll be able to set up a bunch of different presets like this and then either randomize them or dynamically apply them, depending on the situation.
Cool.
Yeah. So we should be able to get a ton of different variety with very little work after we're done all the initial setup.
Yeah.
And is this something that you could use to harmonize various objects in the room, or?
This is
Um,
pretty much just for the floor.
yeah.
I'll let Jock talk to it. You want to talk about that for me?
Yeah. So this is set up for just the floor. We could probably. Well, the funny thing is I believe this was grabbed from one of the character blueprints you had made before, right?
Uh,
So no.
it's basically, so this thing over here, these material
Yeah.
parameters trucks, that's something I made, and it's
Mhm.
basically so like all of the settings that Jock had. So basically, the way this works is under parameter info, there's a name, and I just have to make sure this name matches whatever the name is here, and I can dynamically override it. And index is, so if we look at, let me open this up. So if we look at the static mesh for the floor, it has all of these different elements. These are the different materials. So there's 0 to 8. So there's 9 total. And in here, so I can say either like index 100 will affect nothing because there's no index 100. But we could say -1 is all of them. Why didn't that work? -1 is, oh, why is that not working? I should just be able to type in -1. Okay. Let me try a different one. Let's try it with this. Oh, it's just setting it back to 8. I should be able to set it to -1. That's the default. Oh, it's not because I'm using the preset. That's why.
Right.
Yeah. So when I'm not using the preset, I should be able to change stuff. So yeah, like yeah, I'll change index -1 is everything, is all the materials. So it's overriding the diffuse on all the materials. But I can pick any one and set it to override. And this is something I made for the character for the customization stuff. So we can set, we have like predetermined things. I can't remember what all the settings are for skin, but it's not just color. There's a lot of things with the material about how it interacts with light. So when we have different skin tones, there's a few different settings we set up. Same thing with hair, same thing with the armor and things like that. So there's a bunch of different settings. We can type them in here, and then we can have a big list of all the different predefined settings. And then when you load it up, I built a function that automatically applies all of this stuff to the material. So yeah, and it's something I built for the character creator thing, and it's just
Yeah.
a huge time saver.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily like a tool that's used to kind of harmonize everything, but it's something that we could probably reuse in several other instances, I think. Whenever we kind of want to apply this, I
Yeah.
guess, this sort of same sort of philosophy to other areas, I'm sure we could find more uses for it.
Yeah, because
Um,
I think a few things we were gonna do, like I think one thing is like items in the room. There, a lot of them are. I wouldn't necessarily say placed haphazardly, but like
mhm.
Mhm.
there's very specific placement that we need for puzzles and stuff like that because the seesaw will launch you a certain distance and push blocks go a certain distance, so they're not uh the way we end up placing things for puzzles. They don't really match any kind of pattern like you see here.
Yeah, for
So
sure. They
we
need to
have
match the puzzle that you're trying to solve, right?
Yeah. Well, so what we
Yeah.
ended up doing is we have a different version for the puzzle rooms. It's just kind of like it's pretty much the entire floor is just this sort of brick texture because we don't want items on the floor to be false clues for how to solve the puzzle.
Yeah. We noticed
So
that also there were things like giant levers, there were platforms and switches that you would actually place on the floor, but they would fall like on the middle of a trim and it just looked really awkward. And
Hmm.
so
mhm,
when you just have like a brick tile like that, and we'll have like several different floor types, I guess, for these brick
yeah,
tiles, and maybe I could give them some
mhm,
pattern on top of there, but it's kind of hard to find because of that's the kind of thing where I kind of want the gameplay to kind of dictate where things go. So
mhm.
I don't really want to have like this metal trim in the middle of where a button, like a lever or a Quake platform comes out of the ground.
Yeah.
So
Especially if we do the thing with DLC where it's like, oh, we're introducing electricity, and now like
yeah,
all the metal stuff can conduct electricity, but we have this metal thing on the ground that doesn't for some
yeah.
reason.
Well, the
So
thing about this is I could quickly turn this to not metal. I mean, I could
yeah,
turn this to
yeah,
stone
yeah.
pretty easily, I think. So it's
But
not, or porcelain.
another use that we could talk about too is like because we wanted, so right here in this version it's
Mhm.
dirt. How do I turn that up? Where do I turn up the dirt? It's too many settings.
Yeah, we'll make use of most of them, I think.
But because
The
right
reason
now,
I
yeah,
kind
it's
of
it's it's
yeah,
dirt, but we might have other ones where it's snow actually because it's like cold or
yeah.
something like that.
So that was kind of one of the things was when I was developing this. It's sort of like, well, I mean, if we have a snow level, it'd be nice to swap this dirt out with snow. If we
Hmm.
have our Egyptian level, we want to swap it out with sand,
Yeah,
right?
like
So
if
it's
I
all these
look,
nice little things that we could put in there in
so
lieu of the of that.
yeah,
In
so
fact,
like right
I'm
here you see it says dirt diffuse. What I
mhm.
could do is if I type in dirt first, then now it's using that. that texture for all dirt. So if I look up snow, there
There
we
we
go.
go.
Now it's a frosted over dungeon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad. Play around with
Yeah.
the levels a bit, but then that's pretty close to it, though. Like, I mean, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Although I can sort of see the snow tile a bit obviously, but I'll figure that out.
Can you change those values on the fly?
In theory, yeah, we can. The way we've set this up is we only do it once at the start because we want to. It's kind of a performance thing. We don't want to be changing it too often. But this is absolutely something we could change on the fly, and it's stuff we do. Like this is the same kind of. This uses the same technology we use for like burning stuff, where it's like gradually things go from like wooden color to darker burnt charcoal, and they kind of like brighten up or they get damp, and it's the same kind of system where there's basically in our script every frame we update the material and we just like I have some script that changes this slowly from like 0 to 0.1 to 0.2, and yeah, so we could theoretically do stuff like that. We're not really planning on it, but there's possibilities there.
That would mean you'd have to linger in a room for a really long time just to see it.
Or if we had a snow machine.
Or the fire elements could affect how much snow is on the ground by melting it.
So that's something we did talk about. I don't know if we talked about that last week, but because there are certain things like even with the dust and snow, because we have the water things, and I think we're just kind of going to hand wave that because, like we're not entirely sure what the cost would be for having it dynamically affect like only a certain part of the floor. When like because like theoretically with the water stuff, like the floor around the water should get wet, right? And then maybe spread over time. But
so Scotty actually mentioned something about that though.
Oh yeah?
But yeah, something about like global position to determine stuff. So you could have like a bunch of barrels. But the thing is, it's not something I was really interested in integrating just because it didn't look like single use stuff and it looked a little heavier than what we'd probably need this for.
The thing I would say is I'll launch the game and we can look at some different dungeon rooms. Because what I think makes
all
sense.
The dungeon rooms are visually going to be broken, by the way, until I get the AO baked.
Yeah. But because basically like we have I think so there's 11 different like floor types for the dungeon room. So there's like plain, there's hallways, there's ones that are like the rooms are sort of rounded, there's ones with like fragile floors, there's ones with destructible floors that like you have to get the explosive shot and you could break them. And then there's ones that involve water. So it would make sense that like okay, so the floors are the ones that involve water. We actually can just set a what would the setting for that be? It would be the specular is a lot higher.
I probably
So
have
the
to do
shininess
something.
goes up.
Yeah, I have to probably do something. I was actually going to make like a contained material just for water.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's just and then kind of drive it by vertex color or something. I was going to do something a special case for water and then throw it into master material afterwards, but
Okay.
it's not something I necessarily want to apply to everything. I think, but maybe I'm
makes
wrong.
sense. Wait, why am I going? Oh god, I wanted to go to the dungeon builder. Why am I not going to the dungeon builder? This is.
But yeah, basically, water. What you want to do is raise
what I wanted.
the overall roughness to I guess
Will you lower the roughness because you want it to be shinier and you make it a bit darker?
0. Yeah, put the roughness to 0. But you don't want a mask to drive it either, because right now there's a mask in it. You want to kind of flood the mask, I guess. So you have to kind of add a, I guess not a lerp. You just
had a clamp or something that would multiply it up
wherever you want it.
Sorry, you cut out there for a bit, Chuck.
I was gonna say you lerp it with a white and make the alpha determine what white was, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Or you lerp it. Yeah. Trying to think. Because the other thing I was thinking is like you'd clamp it, so you'd slowly raise the floor. Raise the
Maybe.
bed. I don't know.
There's different
I don't
ways
know.
of
I'm
doing
not a
it.
material artist, so
Yeah. Me neither,
I
but
am.
I
I am
I do.
learning about materials though, which is fun.
Yeah.
'Cause that's
I know enough to get by, but I'm not. I wouldn't call myself a material. Having worked with some of the best material artists in the industry,
mm,
I can clearly say that I can probably do some rudimentary stuff in it.
mhm. Yeah,
I'm
I
not
could do.
quite to
I
that
can
level.
follow some instructions and do very rudimentary stuff.
I can get to where I'm going. I think for half of it. But yep. But the water stuff though, I was probably gonna just special case it and use vertex color to
Mhm.
drive where we wanted the water to go. Because like water is gonna be kind of very specific. Or even yeah, I think I'd probably just I would probably model them special case, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless yeah, I don't see us having like I don't know. Now that I think about it, it would be nice to have like footsteps after you walk out the water. You have these wet
Oh, true.
footsteps everywhere a little
Well,
bit, but like
that
I don't know.
because is that on the material or is that like a
It'd
particle
be a
effect
projection.
or projector mask thing?
That'd probably be a projector mask, but
Although, actually, now that I think about it, is because we couldn't use
yeah.
that kind of projector mask for the shadow below the boss. Bruno had to make something special for us because of the system for
Yeah.
rendering we're using.
Yeah. To be honest, that sounds like the kind of it's thing I'd throw way on the back burner. Like if we
Mhm.
had enough money and time to polish this beyond, you know, anything. Because I'm thinking about this, like you know what, I don't even think this affects gameplay or changes much of anything, and it's sort of like the amount of effort to put that in. It's just I'm
Mhm.
not sure if it'd be worth. Like I'm not sure if it'd really be worth the pain of getting that in, just because we have a lot of other work
Mm.
to do. So
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
it's a back burner item. Would be nice to get, but
Yeah,
in the sequel maybe,
let's see. Yeah,
or the DLC.
DLC.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
well,
great bullet point for the DLC. Footsteps, footprint.
Yeah.
if you're thinking about electricity down the line, it might be worth thinking a bit about water now so you don't have to backtrack too much.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe. Yep.
Well, really, it's more about just kind of opening up possibilities for us.
Yeah.
So, because like even if we had electricity, like we wouldn't in a room like this because there's water in
Mhm.
here. But basically, just wouldn't be
I think
much of a gameplay
yeah.
effect for it.
I think with the water for like rooms like this should be very obvious. They shouldn't be like what's the word? Kind of it's something I'd probably like physically model in and take a bit further than just having like a quick shader.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd probably have to do something a
Well,
little bit more
well, what
with
do you
that. That's
mean?
why
What do you mean model in
well,
exactly?
so the water that's there, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not like I'm not gonna have a shader. I'm actually probably gonna model an actual ledge there and have kind of the water, you know, dipped recessed, I guess. Like the modeling would be recessed, then the water would be like have like a like a good half a foot, I guess, or a little bit of
Hmm.
space. Not necessarily in the collision, but just enough
Hmm.
to make it look like there's water with depth and you're slowed down when you're walked in it. It's gonna have like a
Oh well, this you just fall into. You don't walk through it.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but there is other stuff like up here, like there's
Yeah.
puddles and stuff like that. Because it's always just going to be like a water plane, though, right?
Yeah. But it's stuff like I want to kind of support that more with modeling than just leaving it, I guess. Like I'd probably even have the model like that yeah, we'll see. Because
Oh,
you
because
kind of need to
like yeah, the whole floors you're going to model for something like this, right?
yeah. No,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Florida, I don't think I have to model the entire thing. I just have to model blocks, I
Hmm.
guess,
Oh,
that you're going to need to use. But
yeah,
uh,
because like here,
it's
this
kind of
like the entire
choices.
floor is submerged, but
Yeah.
then yeah,
So for a floor like this, we could probably just use one of the existing
oh, that's nuts.
like puzzle rooms or something. or even any room, really. Yeah, you know what? I'll make something in the master material where it'll be kind of where it darkens the diffuse, and I don't think we need specular. I don't think we
Yeah.
need roughness at all because that's just handled by the water layer on top.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the question would be like, do we want the stuff that's out of the water to be slightly damp or anything like that?
No, probably not. I wouldn't bother.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me personally, just because like it's I don't know if it's worth it.
Okay. This like thing up here. Oh, is this one of the broken
'Cause
rooms?
it's kind of thing where it's
Yep,
kind of
that's the
thing where
broken room.
oh yeah,
Never mind that.
it's the kind of thing where if you have it, people are going to think that maybe it's used for something. Like maybe there's a purpose for there to be wet there, like it's
Oh, yeah,
slippery
that's
or
true.
whatever. So it's like, just let's just tell them it's nothing. Visually tell them it's nothing. Like there's no difference between this or whatever. Because like once you put that in there, then there might be misgivings about what
Yeah.
what the water does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is exactly like that other room with water, except there's no water. It's just a pit you fall into.
Yeah. But stuff like this, I'll have to model the actual pit. Like, you
Mhm.
can't just have like a floating two-dimensional plane. You actually need to have like depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, it has to
I'll have
look
to
like
model-
something supporting the stuff you're walking on.
yeah. So I'll probably have to build some kind of a system, like a runway system, I guess, or for these types
Catwalks.
of rooms. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like the one that's just floating in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, but that'll just be a giant pillar, I guess. I think I actually already have something like this sort of made.
Yeah.
So, I have the texture, the material made. It's going to be pretty much using material that I already have, and it's kind of just making the blocks. But the thing is, like, I have to determine if you want the blocks to look like sometimes. I don't know. I have something like this sort of already made in Max. I haven't put it in the game yet, but it should work, is what I think. I'm just not sure how good it'll look until it's finished. But yeah, it has like a railing system, and
Okay.
can you walk off the ledge easily, or do you kind of run
No.
into a
Well, there's
yeah.
a setting in Unreal character movement that is can walk off ledge, and so it's
Yeah.
set to false right now, so you're not allowed to walk off a ledge.
Okay.
And then it does
So I
certain
think
checks, like if there's something like if there's another piece of ground like 50 centimeters below the ledge, then you'll be allowed to walk off. And
Mhm.
certain things can knock you off. So like if you're getting hit,
Yeah.
you can get knocked off an edge. If you use
So
deplete attack to push
yeah.
something, you can push something off the edge. But generally, no, you don't walk it.
Okay.
And if you
So
dodge, you can go over the
you
edge.
don't want like a lip on there, then you don't, because if
No,
you
there
could
doesn't
push.
need to be any extra collision or anything for edges.
Okay. Okay.
Because yeah, you should be able to dodge over it, right?
Okay. That's fine.
And then yeah, like if you do the push attack, you want to be able to push guys so they
Yeah.
fall into the pits and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So there aren't even any
You know what?
enemies, and I'm still dying. Oh, these guys do. How much damage does this guy? Wow. We're gonna have to rebalance that damage. You just did 1,000 damage to me. I guess I am level 19, but still.
Wow. They're just supposed to kind of annoy you and push you forward, not kill you, right?
Well, it should. It's basically yes, but they have to do a significant amount of damage if otherwise they're not going to annoy you, right?
Remember those things that were
If you
Zelda?
can just stand here, and which you can do if you're facing them, then you can just stand here and be like, yeah. And then you just get
Zelda
pushed
Breath
out.
of the Wild, those things like kill you in one hit. Then you realize just don't go near them until you're near the end of the game, where they still
Right.
kill you in 2 hits. Yeah.
Till you can deflect the shots back at them. Let's see if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Haha. But they're invincible, so.
Yeah.
But if you get hit by that, would you fall down the ledge?
Ooh, it's gonna be hard to tell. I think. Well, ooh. So the fact that I die right away makes it really hard to tell. I can't remember. I think it does get turned off while you're in hit reacts.
Mm.
Let me see while I'm blocking if I get knocked off. No.
Hmm.
But yeah, it should.
I guess that makes sense if you block, right?
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what do you imagine those things should actually be?
Like the towers?
Yeah.
I'll get, I don't know, like some kind of magical thing. Like this one's just because they
Yeah.
have the different attack types too. You
Yep.
might want. Oh, Pixel Theory saying, oh, how long ago? Hey, Pixel Theory. I think lowering the water a couple inches would just make it look less awkward. Up,
Yeah.
oh,
That's a
yeah,
couple of inches. Yeah, that works. You
yeah.
could
I think
lower.
part of it is basically even in some of the rooms, like we don't have the wall.
Yeah.
Where's that room? The water. Because basically, I don't even have a wall showing like kind of where. I guess yeah, you can see like there. It's like right up against
Yeah.
the thing.
It's about 3 inches below.
Yeah, yeah. A few more inches would be good.
Yeah. So those tower things, because like I do want to kind of create something for a lot of these things that grounded in our world, and like
Yeah.
just a laser beam tower doesn't seem like the kind of thing, but
Yeah. Well, it's not really shooting
It-
laser beams. It's shooting. Well,
yeah,
because it's shooting the same projectile as the enemies, right?
yeah. But it
So
reminds me of like a turret you'd see in like StarCraft or Portal, right? So
Yeah.
I do want it should be like I was thinking more like because you see those things in Zelda, but they're often like statues or Breath of the
Mhm.
Wild had those things, and they were just sort of like they were turrets, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Well,
Ancient
they
they
were
had the
all-
ones with and without legs, basically.
yeah. So it'll I guess be something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice though if you could like make something where it's instantaneously recognizable as something that's a threat.
Oh, jeez. That did not get reset properly. A robot arm, like in car factories? We're going for more of a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know how like before we like one of the ideas I had for the thing that blows wind, it'd be like a statue of a dude blowing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, yeah, yeah. A chubby cheek
something like
bird.
that. Yeah, but something more like that. Whereas for these towers, it'd be nice if we had something that kind of personified what this would be, like what attacks you in the wild.
Oh.
A dragon is
Well,
for
what?
fire.
Oh,
Oh, you
you
mean
also
like, oh, you.
have a lot of basis in old mythologies in there, so you can maybe draw from that and find something interesting in there.
Problem with this though, about the mythology thing, is it's going to have to be an item that's uh
Universal almost.
universal across the mythology. So like to me a dragon is sort of universal. Like they have them in Europe, they have them in Asia. You see a dragon, breathes fire. I'm like, okay, well, yeah,
There'd be a
that's that.
skeleton throwing bones.
Yeah, yeah,
A
could
skull
be.
would actually not be bad.
Yeah,
Like
I
a
mean, if
skull
they're
that
all
just rotates
dragons,
towards you and shoots at you. And then, like, it just comes out of its mouth.
yeah.
Oh,
Right now it's a cyclops. But the thing is like that's another thing is like you kind of want to see where it's looking, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing is, like, if it was something with a head, then, like a skull, then it would turn and
Mhm.
face you. And it would turn and face whoever it's going to shoot.
Yeah.
And you also want to see, like, when you're... Because that's something I added was, like, okay, so it goes from blue when it's not going to shoot anything to yellow when it's actually going to fire, so you know when you're in range.
Yeah.
And when you got to get ready to move.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of things like it's one of those things where it's kind of a nice riddle to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, if you don't really solve it, people will know what it is after they get hit a few times. So
Yeah, that's the thing. So I've been playing Valheim with some friends, and we
Yeah.
fought a dragon over the weekend called Motor.
hmm
And we were all psyched up for it. There were a bunch of us I got pinged on Discord to be like, hey, we're gonna do the next boss fight. You should jump in. So I jumped in. I was like, yeah, we get to fight a dragon. It was I don't want to shame the devs here or anything, but it was such a buggy boss fight. Like because it's network multiplayer, and it's like I was shooting over here. He was like looked like he was supposed to be flying, but he was stuck in the same place. And then he just like lerps onto the ground in a completely different pose. And that's where everybody else had been shooting the last few minutes. And I'm like, okay. And then you just see these numbers popping up randomly, and I just died because I couldn't see an attack coming at me. It's just like, oh, I just took a ton of damage, and now I'm dead.
Have a
It didn't look like he attacked me, but
pixel.
Yeah, that's probably a lag issue though.
it's because the thing we're thinking is basically because there weren't a ton of us. I think there were like there were less than 10, maybe 8 or 9 of us,
Yeah.
and basically we were thinking like that it starts to lag when there's too many of us near each other on the server, but even 9 players,
Well,
and it's a dedicated server.
Yeah,
we're paying
I
for it, so it's
played
not-
quite a
doesn't
bit
seem
with
like a
some
ton.
friends too, but what we noticed is that sometimes the game doesn't generate like buildings and monsters the same way for everyone.
Oh yeah.
And
wow.
even for like when we had the same latency, we had some problems, especially with large monsters and bosses. For some reason, they weren't in the same place or in the same pose, as you said. So there's definitely something wonky with that game at some points, but it's still a a hell of a lot of fun.
So Pixel Theory is asking if this game is going to be a roguelike. It's like, no, it's not going to be a roguelike. It's going to be more like an action adventure game.
Yeah, it's there's a whole single player campaign we have. So this is the dungeon builder right now, so you'll be able to build your own dungeons and share them with friends. And we have a puzzle builder over here. There is a full we don't even know how long it is. Like I can burn through it in a few hours. Jacques played like 8 hours and he only got to the second of 5 worlds.
Yeah.
So there's a fairly comprehensive single player. Well, single player, it's like up to 4 player co-op campaign.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things you can do is we have a puzzle room builder / dungeon room builder, kind of like Mario Maker but Zelda. So you can just basically build your own puzzles and put them in your dungeons with boss fights and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I
And
guess
he's also suggesting that for the turret thing, we can get a spitting plant or a skeleton on a plant throwing bones.
yeah, or
Or
fireworks.
fireworks at us.
I do like the
These are good
fireworks because
suggestions.
the thing is we have about 15 different regular enemy types. I'll just do
Yep.
yes, I'm gonna try to figure out what to do. So yeah, you can there's for our puzzle stuff there's a ton of different elements. This is just like a test room, and you can link them together. So like here's a switch and it's linked to this platform. So I just had a bunch of stuff testing here. So I'll go into the room, and basically you'd have to step on the golden switch in order to open the doors. So I can just do that and the doors will open. But like there's different switches you can hook up to like platforms and things like that. There's this spinny gear thing. So if you do a special attack, you can spin the gear and that'll turn that gear, and that gear is linked to that platform. Then same thing here. So I have a gear spinning, but it doesn't spin the other gears. So I can do this, push this block in there, and now these gears will turn each other and raise that platform. Things with like water going up and things like that. We have a whole flammable system. So like fire can set stuff on fire. We can.
And all this art is like placeholder. By the way, there's none of the art that's actually going to be final. So
It actually looks more placeholder because you broke the shader on the floor. I was like, yep, that's definitely placeholder.
yeah,
it was a bit ambiguous before, but now it's like, yep, that's. But anyway, where is my platform? Oh, this is weird. Need to figure out what's going on. Oh, there's my. So like any block you can place. Weird. I'm gonna have to check that out.
yeah, we have
But
a
you can
visual
set it
style
from
in mind.
stone to wood or heavy wood, and so
Yeah.
like wood can catch on fire if it's near if it gets hit by fire, and then there's water stuff that can put it out. So yeah, tons of things, and we have this air thing that'll push. Just put that in. He's asking if we have a visual style in mind. We were going over some material stuff sooner. I don't know, Chuck, if you want to talk a bit about
Yeah.
that.
A lot of ground to cover, but visual style, we have some assets to look at. But if I were to kind of break it down, it's sort of like a Zelda-ish, but sort of more influenced by a lot of Korean stuff and a lot of Blizzard stuff, and yeah, and so I've worked about 20 years in AAA. So I've been working for like IDOS Montreal, and Ubisoft, and Funcom, and various other places throughout my career. And so it's like I have a goal in mind. It's more about just the time and the resources to get there. But yes, hopefully it'll get there.
Yeah. So I'll just turn this on and we can look at some of the fire stuff. So, like, placeholder effects, but, like, the wind can spread the fire. And then the wooden stuff burns, and it'll eventually, like, runs out of fuel and blows up. It's not going to blow up, but that's just the effects I had on hand. And then, yeah, you can place all that stuff in a dungeon. So after you finish building a room, go over here to Dungeon Builder, and then you could, like, place the room. There's boss fights and regular combat rooms. We were going through all the empty rooms before. Then there's, like, combat rooms where you just fight guys, and then treasure as well.
Oh, Remnant of the Ashes. No, I think that's a bit too dark and mature for what we're going for. I think we're going for something just a little more. My goal visually is to have it looking a little more like Trine in the end. So a lot more colorful, a lot more. Yeah, Remnant of the Ashes is kind of more mature. This is sort of like more like an all ages family friendly game. So I think it's more inspired by like Zelda, uh, Wind Waker, but not cell shaded.
Mm-hmm. Oh, crashed.
Yeah, well, you can just talk about the premise of the game basically to explain what kind of person it's aimed at.
Yeah, it's a 4 player. Oh, sorry, it's like the premise of the game is like your dog. You're looking for your lost dog, and you encounter a world. Sorry, you encounter a village where I guess all of the heroes of these mythologies meet. Sort of like you'll meet Odin with Neith with Inanna, and it's sort of like this culmination of where gods and heroes from different mythologies all meet, and they kind of help send you on they send you on these various quests in their world where you kind of have to help them, and kind of it builds up the world that you're going, and I guess brings you closer to finding your dog. So yeah, it's a very fantastical game.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of an Alice in Wonderland, Spirited Away
Yeah.
kind of situation where it's like, gotta go. You don't know how you got there, but you're just like, oh, I'm here now, and then you run into all these characters. They all have problems and you kind of go to the places they're from to like help them out with the problems that they're having, in the hopes to find it. Because usually it's like, oh yeah, there's I don't know, maybe your dog's there, and so that you go there and you help people along the way, and then you come back, and then kind of each person you meet, there's a new shop in the village hub, kind of like let me actually just load up the village hub. Like there's one that's like Odin will be the armory, one of them will be
Yeah.
look in here, village hub.
80s. It's actually I think we're borrowing a little bit from Bastion. Uh Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Okay, yeah, I could kind of see that. That's the Ubisoft sort of Breath of the Wild game that came out just last year.
Oh, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah,
Okay,
they did a horrible job promoting that. It's a shame because it's a very good, fun game, or so I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's cool. It's sad that never got the sad thing about games like this, like when Ubisoft kind of fails on it, is that, or it doesn't kind of take off to the level that they wanted, was that it ends up, they just kind of give up on the entire genre completely, I find, which makes it a bit sad.
Yeah,
They give up on the
because like yeah,
genre.
I think they're looking for Ubisoft is usually kind of looking for the next. They want the next big Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like with I think because like Watch Dogs is pretty big, but I don't think it's as big as they wanted, and they kind of for the second one they didn't have as big a marketing push because they didn't think it was going to be as big, which is weird.
Immortals, what was it? Assassin's Creed dev?
Oh, I thought it was based in Quebec.
It was the Quebec.
Oh yeah,
It was the
Odyssey. Yeah,
team, right?
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The Odyssey people. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Isn't pretty much everyone that works for Ubisoft now part of the Assassin's Creed team?
Probably were at one point or another. But it's a big team.
I think that's the one game I didn't work on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny
Everyone
because
else
when I
gets
went to
Ubisoft.
Ubisoft, it's like I love Prince of Persia, never got to work on it though.
Yeah.
I worked
You
on a
worked on
bunch of
eight.
stuff. I
You
worked
worked on
on a couple of Assassin's Creed games, but I didn't like I was like I really want to work on Prince of Persia. No, you can work on Shaun White skateboarding or Naruto. Oh yeah, we can go to the village hub and we can look at the tree.
Yeah.
I'm just
A
calling
lot
it a
of
tree
folk.
because I can't remember the name we came up with.
Oh, Leroy or
Well, you know, you've yet to convince me that that isn't like something your daughter made up. His daughter is like 2 years old. It sounds like she was trying to say something, but it came
Oh,
out
it's
as
weird.
oh, you
This
remember.
is not working on your machine.
Hmm?
It's very emissive and very bright and
Mhm.
bluish on mine. So I think I'll have to tweak it.
Okay. Yeah, that's the center of the village. Ooh. And then yeah, here's the first person you run into. Everything
That's
obviously placeholder. It's a
yeah, that
huge
Neath
fish
is not
patch.
from our game. That's the Neath that it looks like needs to be in the center of a mall during Christmas. Nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually from Paragon. That's a Paragon asset that we're using right now as a placeholder. We have our concept art for it. We don't have the model.
It's a work in progress.
Mhm.
But yeah, the art is coming along really well, and I'm really excited to see how the modeling will go.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see how the dungeons come together.
Yeah. So hopefully for dungeons will be the next thing I kind of do work on, and I'll stop working on it when I'm happy with where they're at. Because I think we're using it a few times in the trailer. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then moving on from that, I'll probably jump onto Dreams Reach, this village.
Yeah, it definitely needs some love.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all characters that you helped along the way, so oop, I don't even know. Yeah, because I can't open that shop yet because I don't have any of the items required. But basically, each person you help opens up another shop. And this one, there's like a little training hall down here where you can respec your character. So yeah, most of the skills are locked right now. But yeah. And then we have like a bunch of different moves you can do because it's a dual stick shooter. But there's also a melee mode you can go into where you're still using the dual sticks if you just hold down the trigger. Actually, wait. There's a. I can turn on the gamepad so you can see what I'm pressing. And then, yeah, you can do combos. So, I'm standing here. Which one am I trying to do? 1,000 pokes. So, enter melee mode, holding the right trigger, and then basically just tap forward. Do different combos. Oh, no stamina.
I don't use that one as much as I ought to.
Yeah, it's really good. It does a ton of damage.
Yeah. I'm addicted to the 1,000 pokes.
Yeah.
And the
What's this one? Sideswipe.
since this I use that one a lot too.
Yeah, that one breaks blocks, so you do.
Motion blur on the shadows? Probably. I'm
I
guessing.
don't know. I haven't looked at that.
Haven't gotten there yet. Look, the shadows are at 30 frames per second.
I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of I haven't done a lot of research into that.
Yeah.
We do like there's melee and range combos you can do. Basically, you can turn it into a bullet hell for the guys you're fighting. Yeah, like basically, I don't know if I want to go into what I was. You can tell. So there's like two things for the text here. One of those is obviously I gotta delete. The other one is basically So I've been working on network multiplayer over the last. It's been just over a week. It's surprising how much I have in just over a week. Like most things are working right now, so like player customization is working. You can customize your players. I'll go back to the main menu. It doesn't crash. So let's make a new game. Easy. And yeah, we have a new game plus there in case you missed it. So yeah. And you'll be able to do, right now it's set to 1. You can do like 2, 3, 4, 5, and keep going.
Mhm.
How long have we been working on this? I think we're coming up on 3 years since we started the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's only 2 of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Unless
we've been working on
it's-
it like very part time. Like,
Yeah. Okay, we've been bouncing back and forth between doing like contract work. Like I can't say who. I have an interview tomorrow to start another contract. Just to like keep money in the bank, and we're hiring concept artists and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But we're funding this ourselves, so it's like
Yes.
do a bit of contract work, do a bit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Got to pay the bills.
I was working on like I spent the last like, 5 or 6 months on BioShock, the next BioShock
You're
game.
not supposed to say that. Is that public knowledge that they're making
Yeah,
a
it is.
Bioshock game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's- oh, yeah. That's how they're
All
getting
right.
people to fly there.
No, true.
So,
They don't have to sign an
hits,
NDA
for
to know that.
I think so. I think it's all public.
Okay.
I mean, they don't have a trailer, but it literally said work on the next BioShock game, apply here. So
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes
you know,
sense.
let me put
But
the
yeah, we
clip.
have a character customization system.
Yeah.
So you can change all this stuff, and all that's now replicated. All of the character moves are replicated, so when you're attacking, when you're doing a combo, when you get different abilities like dodge and the like explosive shot and stuff like that, that all gets replicated. The game state gets replicated, so like if there's a door that's open or like if you push a block, it gets pushed on the client and the server. So it's been let me clip that and put it on Reddit. Sure. What was I gonna say though? Yeah, so been working on a ton of replication stuff. There's a few things that I've been having trouble with, like the dialogue, because you could press A to like go through all the dialogue, but that only works on the server. It doesn't work on the client, so gotta figure out how to do that. And there's a few streaming things. We don't have the procedural dungeons working on the client yet, but there's also a streaming thing where we can't, because when you go down into a dungeon, we unload the overworld and then just load in the dungeon. But the overworld doesn't get unloaded on the client either. So you could just see the surface of the overworld. So I have to figure out how to fix that. And then the dungeon rooms we load in technically aren't replicated to the client. I have solutions for that, but there's a lot of things I'm gonna have to check to make sure that's working. But a lot of it's in. Like you could probably bosses. I'm gonna have to do some work on the boss fights
Mhm.
because
I have to do work on this character customization room.
Yeah, that's mostly just like I didn't model stuff, but I just threw a bunch of stuff together because it looked really placeholder before. Still placeholder now, but looks better. It's less jarring than it was before.
Yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next BioShock is set in space. Was not expecting that. That I can't comment on. Yeah.
So no, it's set just before Bioshock Infinite, which was just before the first Bioshock.
I'm not allowed to
I'll
say
just
anything
keep
about
going
this.
back in
That's when we'll get
time.
in trouble. Yeah. But yeah, it looks like I was just Googling just to make sure. But yeah, it's announced.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's announced
So
they're working on
would
it.
seeding the dungeon not help with the handover? So right now we do have seeded. Well, so we do our procedural dungeon system does support seeding. There's a few caveats to that, although it's all solvable because basically there's a seed, but there's also the list of previous rooms we've used. and the list of previous rooms we've used affects how likely they are to appear in the next one. So the same seed without that list is not necessarily going to generate all the same rooms. There is a way around that, which is basically we share the list of rooms with the client, and then we seed everything. That part is not too bad in terms of like loading in the proper rooms. The thing that might be difficult is because the way Unreal's structure works, like there's a setting on any object called is replicated, and basically what that means is when this object is loaded on the server, any not any changes, but certain changes you can send to the client. And so like a big push block, the physics block, when that gets pushed on the server and the client because the server knows that there's a version of this on the client, and it knows which block on the client it corresponds to the one on the server. If we're loading up two separate rooms on the one on the server and then one on the client that are completely separate, they just happen to overlap exactly, then I don't know if Unreal's going to be able to understand that when you push this block on the server, it corresponds to that block in the identical position on
Step through five.
check against the room list. Surely you could just step through 5 to 10 seed possibilities, check against the room list, and then hand over the one that fits best to the client. Oh, well, the thing is, like, basically what I can do is I can, when I generate the dungeon, I build a list of all the rooms that I'm going to make and what position they're all in, and then I send that to the client so the client can load them in. The problem is, though, that, like, since if the client loads in a separate version of that room that's in the same spot, then it doesn't necessarily know that all the objects in that room are on the server, and when the server doesn't know to send that information to those objects on the client. Like when you push a block, it doesn't know that block that was created on the server is related to that completely random block that was created on the client. So, and there are theoretically ways around that. So one thing I could do is, so I basically do that, but then I have some kind of controller that, okay, anytime a block gets pushed on the server, then it sends a message to the client of like, okay, so this is the direction the block was pushed, and this is the current position of the block. Then it goes to the client and it checks, okay, it does a quick search. Okay, are there any blocks in this position? Oh, okay, yes, there's a block that's in that position. Apply this force to it. So there's technically ways around that. So is there a reason that the server can't be the one that triggers the spawning on everything? Typically that's the way it works, and that's what I want to try and figure out if I can do. The thing I was just explaining is basically my plan B, but I don't have a good plan A right now. I'm searching for a good plan A. I'm probably going to reach out to a few people at Epic to see if there's a way of supporting this. But right now, all I've seen is my terrible plan B. So, because yeah, there is like that's basically how the rest of it worked. Oh, yeah. Make each room a blueprint. Theoretically, that would work. That would be very cumbersome, though. To convert everything and yeah, I guess like loading them in. I'd be very worried about that though, because it makes it a lot harder to test and modify. But yeah, we could like that definitely crossed my mind. It's in terms of workflow, it's not ideal. Because there's other things too, like basically the way the rooms are set up. There's a gameplay room. I guess I could show that. Let's see. So in a dungeon room, so we'll look at a puzzle room. Yep, save that. So like in a typical room, there's the base room, contains all of the gameplay logic and very little lighting. So basically there's the base room is just the gameplay logic and like a few puzzle elements. And then what it does is it requests an art room, and that way we can kind of randomize which room it gets, and then we can have like, oh, this one appears in a crypt, this one builds, this one appears in like a snowy tomb or something like that. But basically doing that. Yeah, like yeah. So I think, and there's other things with lighting we're gonna want to handle too. But yeah, it's a problem that I have right now, and I'll I just need to do a bit more research and look into a solution. Like I said, I'll reach out to somebody from Epic and see. I've even seen plugins that might actually solve it, but I'll have to do a little more investigation because at first glance, some of those didn't seem like. One of the examples was like, oh, there's this one solves it by making a blueprint on the basically kind of what you're saying is instead of building it in a blueprint, basically it's just a blueprint that has a reference to a level instance, and when you load the level instance on the server, that blueprint also loads it on the client. Which I mean, I don't need to buy a plugin to do that. I could script that myself, but it's the same problem I was talking about earlier, where the server doesn't necessarily know that the objects in that room exist on the client. So yeah, lots of some very complicated replication stuff. The dialogue stuff, I think. Ooh, actually, it's weird because it's that you see the proper dialogue the first time on the client, but when I change it to the next line, it doesn't update, which I don't understand, and I'm probably gonna have to just change how that works. But yeah, lots of weird. I'm really happy with the amount of progress I made though. Like level transitions are working. You can go from one level to the next. Combat is working pretty well. Bosses, I'm gonna have to make some changes because they're not using regular animations and they're all like placeholder, but they should work pretty well. But like level transitions, missions, or quests, like all of that stuff, level persistency, really good. Just the procedural dungeon system and unloading the overworld because I'm using the world composition system. But when I try and unload levels on the server, they get unloaded on the server, but they don't get unloaded on the client as well, which is annoying. So I'll have to talk to somebody about that. Okay, so but if the dungeons are mostly modular, you could have the server load in the rooms empty, then have the blueprint that spawns all of the gizmos. Okay.
Interesting.
We don't need to really worry about the enemy stuff because that like enemies are one thing that actually it handles pretty well because they're pawns and they get replicated. Uh, so but yeah, it's more the objects. I guess maybe if they're spawned in, then it might work. I'd have to be very careful about that though. That's an interesting idea. If they get spawned in, yeah. Oh, that'd be weird because it almost actually would make sense using the puzzle system we built or the puzzle builder because it doesn't necessarily use the same logic. But the way the puzzle builder works is it creates a proxy that spawns in the object, and that would probably get replicated if it spawns in that.
Build a special blueprint.
Right, guys, I got a jet for tonight. Have a good time
Oh.
finishing this stream.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night, Phil.
Take care,
Okay,
guys.
yeah, that makes sense. That'd be an easy way to just collect all the classes and their positions and then spawn them in. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I
So
can
out
see
of my
that working.
wheelhouse with any of this.
Hmm?
So out of my wheelhouse with any of this, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
It's replication, man. Yeah, yeah, that volume idea could actually work pretty well. It's okay. I appreciate the insight. Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking about a lot of stuff. I think that worked pretty well. I'll have to see. The first thing I want to do is see if I can actually get the level instances spawning, because the other thing about them is basically the fact they. Oh, nice. Hey, that's not bad though. It's not a bad idea. Like, because that's one of the nice things about the blueprint system is how you can offload a bunch of work outside of the game, and you can do stuff like you can do stuff in the editor in the construction script, and then save it, and then when you load the game, then it just it's already done. And there's a bunch of stuff like that I've already done. Like, let me see if I can load up Village Hub. Been selected. All right, so like I made these bush placement things. So there's a spline here, and you can move it around, and it basically just places a bunch of bushes all along the spline, and you can like add a point, stretch it out, and then when you actually play the level, like those are destructible. So I'll just run through there and see if I can destroy the. Yeah, and it's like it was either that or just place them all manually. Like I don't have time for this.
So you'll take an hour making a spline generator instead.
Hey, I use it all over the place, man. There's the spline one, and there's a volume one too, where it just populates a volume with a bunch of bushes that you can sneak through. Because we have a stealth system in our game, uh, where you can like if there'll be an enemy on patrol walking back and forth, and if he sees you, starts combat. But you can like these bushes will obscure their line of sight, and there's other bushes that you can like walk through. They you like go slower through them, but you can actually walk through them, and they kind of jostle back and forth. Uh, no, I don't have a player right now. What's going on? Guess I have to jump in. It probably something to do with multiplayer where I have to jump into a game properly now. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, I'll just show you the other. So if I just find this, the other one is this. That is a big fur. But yeah, basically just fills the volume. Oh yeah, that's actually that's I think that's what that's supposed to be. So you can just fill stuff like that, or you can use a sphere instead. Then and then these ones, as you walk through, they like jostle back and forth, and they're all destructible and flammable with our flammable system, our elemental system. And we made enemies that are on fire, so if they walk past any of this stuff, it will catch fire, and then the fire will spread from plant to plant to plant and burn down. That was pretty funny the first time I set that up. I was like, "Why is this all?" Oh, oh yeah. Let's see.
Physics materials?
Yeah, physics
No.
materials. No, we added like basically we added some volumes so because we wanted them to be able to overlap and be able to affect things. So like if a player overlaps a flammable thing, they'll take a bit of damage. If two flammable things are overlapping and one of them's on fire, the one that's on fire sends heat to the other one, and then once it gets enough heat, then it like starts burning, and then it has a certain amount of fuel. There's also dampness, so it can get wet, and then if it gets damp at all, it'll put out the fire. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't really want to debug why I can't just jump in now. It's really weird though. It must have something to do with all the multiplayer stuff I've been doing. It's been breaking. I've been slowly breaking a lot of stuff and then realizing it's broken and having to fix it since I've been setting up all the replication things.
Could do the same.
Okay.
Physics
Oh, really?
materials.
Physics materials can do that without overlaps. So, how exactly would that work? Like, if something has a physical material on it, And it's I'll have to look into that. Because we have a bunch of physical materials set up, but we were just using them for like particle effects and audio and things like
And
that.
audio as well. Interesting.
Yeah. The nice thing about our game is like performance. There's a chance it become a problem, but because of our perspective, like you're usually like looking about like this, and
Yeah.
because I'm using the world composition editor, like if you're looking here, there's a good chance like nothing outside of this area is actually going to be loaded. So we only have a very tiny portion of the level overloaded at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll call it for the stream. Thanks for stopping by, Pixel Theory.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good feedback. Good insight.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I'll stop recording then.